She hired men to target her own parents so that she could be with her secret dealer boyfriend. Jennifer Pan was born on June 17th of 1986 in Markham, Canada to her parents Han and Bic Pan. Her parents were Vietnamese immigrants and they wanted their children to have the life that they could never have, so they led a very strict lifestyle. Rules and discipline were the major aspects of Jennifer's childhood. She wasn't allowed to go to parties, and if she were to make the slightest mistake, she would get in trouble for it. Jennifer had straight A's on her report cards. She played piano, she figure skated, and she had a scholarship to Ryerson University. In high school, Jennifer broke her leg and she lost her chance of ever becoming a figure skater, and because of this, her grades slid from A's to B's. She knew she would be in big trouble with her parents, so to conceal the truth, she started forging her report cards. When Jennifer was a senior, she did not pass her calculus class and she was not allowed to attend Ryerson University. She knew that she was not going to be able to tell her parents this, so she told them that she got an offer and was going to transfer to the University of Toronto. Once Jennifer saw how easy it was to lie to her parents, she continued to tell them that she was going to class, getting scholarships, and was even volunteering at a children's hospital. She did this for several years so that her parents could be proud of her, and she did not want them to find out about a guy she was dating named Daniel Wong, who was a substance dealer. However, these web of lies wouldn't continue for much longer once Jennifer's father, Han, started to get suspicious of her. One day, Han followed Jennifer to work and realized that she was lying, and eventually, everything she told them was a complete lie. Once Jennifer realized that her web of lies was unraveling in front of her, she felt like she had no way to escape. Jennifer was desperate to maintain her life with Daniel, and she wanted to escape her parents' control, so she came up with a horrifying plan. Together, they came up with a plan to hire men to target her parents. Once Jennifer's parents would be out of the way, she would pay these men $10,000 so that she could continue living her life. On November 8th of 2010, Jennifer used a key to open the door to her parents' house, and at 10:05 p.m., three men, David, Crawford, and Eric, invaded the home. Jennifer's parents were caught off guard. Jennifer's mother was shot in the head 3 times, and her father was shot in the face and the shoulder, but he survived. Once the men had left the home, Jennifer called 911 and stated that it was a robbery attempt. At first, police trusted her, but then her statements made her look like a suspect. Jennifer stated that when the intruders came in, they tied her hands behind her back, but police were confused on how she was able to call 911, and her father, who survived, stated that he saw Jennifer talking to one of the intruders like if that was her friend. By the time of the second interrogation, there was a lot of discrepancies in what Jennifer had to say. They asked her to show them how she was able to get to her phone and call 911, but she was unable to do that, so the police were closing in. On November 12th, Jennifer's father, Han, came out of a coma, and he told police everything Jennifer told one of the intruders before the attack. Because of this evidence, Jennifer just decided to confess to everything. In 2011, Jennifer, Daniel, and those 3 men were arrested and charged with first-degree murder and attempted murder. During trial, Han testified against Jennifer, and he recounted the night of the attack and how he felt like stabbing her in the back. On December 13th of 2014, Jennifer was convicted and handed a life sentence and will not be eligible for parole for at least 25 years. As for Daniel and those 3 men, they also received similar sentences.
Celeste and David actually knew each other since 2021, and Celeste would have been only 11 years old. Allegedly, Celeste's mother said that at the time her daughter disappeared, her daughter had a boyfriend named David. LAPD has confirmed that Celeste had a tattoo on her right index finger that said shh, and it does appear that David had the exact same tattoo, so they had matching tattoos. And allegations have been forming that the two of them were in a relationship. I use air quotes because she was underage and David is not. There's also been some alleged leaks showing David and Celeste together. There's this photo that was screenshotted from his close friend's story. Clips from a live stream have also resurfaced where both of them seem to acknowledge that they shouldn't be on live together and also joke about how David is a PDF file.
We need to delete this. Maz, can we delete all VODs? And then as soon as the stream ends, delete the stream too? He trained you.
No, you didn't.
That's controversial.
It's controversial of race.
Really good.
Okay,
It's been a good one. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Mwah, 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 mwah. Oh my! Delete everything. Delete everything. Everything goes. Everything goes. Everything.
Allegedly, since everything has been coming out, someone has hacked David's iCloud and more photos of David and Celeste have been revealed. There's also been an alleged leak of one of David's unreleased songs from 2023. This is a love song and there's lyrics about a girl named Celeste. And if this is the same Celeste, Celeste would have only been 12 years old. With everything coming out, a lot of people have been digging into a lot of David's songs, music videos, his lyrics. One of the singer's most famous songs, Romantic Homicide, contains the lyrics, "I killed you, and I didn't even regret it." The singer also had a music video that shows a girl's body being put in the trunk of a car. I'm filming this video before it actually goes up, so it's very possible by the time this video goes up, it'll already be outdated. More information will have come out, and if that is the case, please put it in the comments to let everyone know. As of right now, a cause of death.
He believed his heart was shrinking and the only way to survive was to drink blood. Richard Chase was born in Sacramento, California in 1950, and from very early on, something was wrong. He described his home life as very abusive, and as a child, he showed very early warning signs like bedwetting, arson, and cruelty to animals. As he got older, things only got worse. Richard started using substances heavily, and his behavior became more and more bizarre. At one point, his roommates ended up moving out because Richard would walk around nude even when guests were over. But what makes this case truly terrifying were his delusions. Richard became convinced that his heart was shrinking. He believed that his organs were moving around in his body and that someone had taken parts of him and that his blood was turning into dust. Doctors ended up diagnosing him with paranoid schizophrenia, and at one point he was even hospitalized, but after a short time later, he was released. And that decision would end up costing people's lives. Because once Richard was released, his condition spiraled even further. He became obsessed with the idea that he needed blood to survive. Richard started bringing home animals like rabbits, cats, stray animals, and he would harm them, drink their blood, and even mix their organs into a drink. At one point, he even injected animal blood into his own veins, which landed him into the hospital for blood poisoning. He was institutionalized again, but somehow doctors believed he wasn't a danger anymore, so they released him into his mother's care. And this is where things took an even darker turn because his mother took him off of his medication. Without treatment, Richard's delusions completely took over. He started to believe that Nazis and UFOs were poisoning him, and the only way for him to survive was to consume blood. And soon enough, animals weren't cutting it anymore. In December of 1977, Richard committed his first murder, and it was a random drive-by shooting of a man named Ambrose Griffin. Just weeks later, things escalated. Richard started entering homes of doors that were unlocked because in his mind, if a door was locked, he wasn't welcome. Inside one of these homes, he attacked a woman named Teresa Wallen, and what he did inside that home was just so terrifying. Just 4 days later, Richard carried out his final and most devastating attack. He entered the home of Evelyn Miroth, where multiple people were inside, including a toddler. By the time it was over, several lives were taken, and it triggered a massive manhunt. Richard was eventually caught by someone who knew him, recognized the signs, and reported him. The question wasn't just what he did, it was whether he understood it. During trial, Richard's defense claimed that he was deeply detached from reality, and he just felt like if he didn't consume blood, that he was going to die. But prosecutors pointed that he showed signs of planning. Richard wore gloves, brought weapons, and chose homes strategically, which meant on some level he may have known what he was doing. In 1979, Richard was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to death, but his story doesn't end there. While on death row, Richard still believed in his delusions and claimed that he needed a radar gun to detect UFOs because he believed that they were after him. Then in 1980, he was found dead in his cell. Richard had been secretly saving his medication and used it to end his life. This case left behind a chilling question. How can someone that is so disconnected from reality be released over and over again?
An entire family is missing under extremely bizarre circumstances. There was blood found throughout the home. The mother's mattress is missing, and their cell phones were found inside of the home. The family were reported missing on Saturday, January 31st by a neighbor. The mother, Ariella, works for a painting company, and she did not answer the door when her ride came to pick her up. The person giving her a ride went to the neighbor's house looking for her, and the neighbor thought that it was bizarre for her to not answer the door, so he went looking. He could not get Ariella to answer the door, so he said that he went inside because they are neighbors like that, they are close, and the family was not inside. Authorities were called, and when they arrived, they found what appeared to be a struggle inside of the home. Police said there was blood found throughout the home, not a huge amount, but it was definitely a struggle. Something bizarre is the mother's mattress is missing, and the cell phones were found left behind. It appeared that clothing had been dumped out of hampers, and the hampers were missing from the home. Ariella's boyfriend, the father of her 2-year-old son, was initially questioned, but he had an alibi. Police said they have looked at nearby surveillance footage, and it is helping. This is in Theodore, Alabama. This is a very bizarre situation, and I will keep you guys updated as more information comes out.
A mother poured boiling water all over her husband while he slept, but when you hear why she did it, I wonder if you'll understand her rage. So back in 2007, Karina Smith is living in the UK with a man named Michael Baines. They got together when she was like 21 years old, and Michael was 41. So just know, off this age gap, this story is not gonna get any better. So Karina had 2 kids, 1 daughter and 1 son from a previous relationship, and then with Michael, they had a son together named Craig. And Craig is about 25 years old in the year 2007, and he had just gotten out of prison for a brutal assault charge. Now, everyone is super happy that he is finally free, but he does something that really dims the light on that happiness. He tells his mom, Karina, something that stuck to her mind like a splinter. He said, "Mom, he's a pet. He's touched me in really bad ways." And Karina, assuming that he's talking about the man that he assaulted, just brushes it aside. She didn't push or dig into what he's really trying to tell her, because by the next day, Greg seemed much happier. So she just kind of assumed maybe he was speaking irrationally. But this detail right here, those words that he told her, will come back and haunt Karina, because just days after that confession, Craig his own life. And man, did this leave Karina wondering, how did his life go so wrong? How did the boy that I raised end up here? Well, it turns out that all of those questions will be answered by July 2020, almost 14 years later. So it is a gorgeous summer day in the UK when Karina's daughter, we're just gonna call her Emma for story purposes, invites her over to her house. They're literally just talking, laughing, enjoying each other's company, as they should, when Karina's like, "Man, I am really enjoying my time. I don't want to leave yet. Let me call Michael and let him know that I'm going to stay just for a few extra hours." So she beep boop boop Michael's number and tells him, "Hey honey, I'm going to stay over at Emma's house a little while longer. We're honestly having a great time. I don't want to leave yet." But for some reason, he is not happy about that, like at all. He's telling Karina, "For what? I told you to get home, so let's go." And Emma is sitting there looking at her mom's face on the phone, and she could just tell that this call isn't going very well. Like, she's starting to pick up on all of the tension that's going on in the air, and now she can hear it in her mom's voice. "Oh, no, honey, it's not like that. Yes, I know. Okay, I'm sorry." Like, have you ever seen someone on a phone call and you know that they're getting screamed at on the other end of the line? Yeah, that's this right here. And for some reason, this really became the cherry on top for Emma's anger. I'm guessing that after years of keeping her mouth shut and seeing how badly Michael treats her mom, this was her one chance to speak up. So either during or after the call, I'm not sure which one, Emma looks at her mom's face and says, "Ask him what he did, or I'll tell you myself." And Karina's like, "What? What are you talking about? What did he do? Why has there been this weird secret tension going on?" Because in her shoes, this isn't the first time that her kids have tried hinting something at her. And rather than coming clean about it, they always just had this weird energy between the kids and Michael. But this time, Karina has had enough of the hints. She just looks at her daughter and says, "Tell me, just tell me. Whatever it is, I'll listen, but I cannot keep doing this." And that is when Emma just breaks.
When I was 10 years old, my mom tried to murder me, and this is exactly what happened that night. My parents lived in 2 different states, so I always had to go back and forth in between holidays. And this year I was at my dad's house, but I was switching midday of Christmas Day. So this was Christmas Day of 2006, and I was 10 years old. So I had a phone call with my mom the night before, or the morning of. We had just celebrated Christmas, and I let her know that I gifted a trip to Disneyland, and I was so excited to go. I remember her emotions instantly shifting, and back then, which I didn't realize at the time, I was super aware or hyper aware of her emotion shifting, and that kind of shifted my emotions with her. I remember feeling guilty that I had been gifted this trip to Disneyland. I just thought, okay, I'm just not going to make it a bigger deal. That's strange, whatever. Then I fly to my mom's house. We lived 2.5 hours away. So when I flew into SeaTac, we actually had a 2.5 hour drive. So I remember her asking a lot of questions. Like, I was obviously so excited to see her. I ran in her arms like she was my safe place, which is part of the story that is kind of crazy. Up until that point, I did not understand her addiction. I did not understand the depths of what she was going through mental health wise. I didn't understand that a lot of things in my household were not normal. It was not normal for me to be getting out her pills. It was not normal for me to be almost truant because of how many tardy and absences I had at 9-10 years old because she was unable to even get out the door to take me to school. It was not normal for me to be getting myself ready, to be eating meals and changing every diaper of my little sisters, and I was only 9-10 years old. That was not normal, but at the time, that wasn't on my radar. Anyway, nonetheless, we're driving back. She's asking me lots of questions. I'm already on edge and like drilling me with these questions. How was that your dad's? How was your stepmom? How was all this and this and this and this? And again, at the time, I didn't realize that she was trying to dig for information. I was just an open book. I told my mom everything. I was a little bit nervous, actually, because of managing her emotions of how I answered, but I still was very, very honest and very transparent about the things that happened. Anyway, so I started to develop this toothache, and I remember it clearly. The reason I had the toothache is because I had not gone to a scheduled dentist appointment, and I don't even know how long I was to get like a root canal or something on one of these teeth, or even it pulled, and she hadn't taken me. So I would get these toothaches regularly. So I knew that it wasn't that big of a deal, but I remember it hurting really, really bad. But again, I was a kid. I didn't like to take medicine. My mom had so much medicine in our house. I think we had 3 cabinets full of medicine from her. And I didn't trust doctors already because she would always use her addiction covered in mommy's sick. Doctors are going to figure out what's wrong. And I would see these panic attacks and she would have to go into the hospital. And so I did not like medicine. I did not like the doctor. I didn't like anything medical because I felt like they were failing my mother. And so why would I want to take them? So she was like, well, we'll just get medicine when we get to the house. So 2.5 hours pass by. We go to the house. And I remember just being really tired. I had a long travel day. It had been hours. I went to the staircase and I plopped my suitcase on the staircase and I got my brand new cheetah print pajamas on. Was so excited to be home and to share Christmas with my siblings the next day with my mom. Just felt like I was in the right place, even though I had no idea that I was living in chaos. So my mom, she was like, just go to bed. And at this time I co-slept with my mom, even though I was 10 years old, co-sleeping with her from the very beginning. So I got in our bed is what I called it. And she was like, get in our bed. I'll be in there shortly. So I put on a movie and I started to doze in and out, in and out. I realized my mom wasn't coming in. So I was like, that's weird. Started getting like a little bit of anxiety and I would always check on her. I'd always make sure that she was okay wherever she was. So I snuck into the bathroom and I asked her, like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I guess just go back in bed. So I went back in bed. I thought I remember her on the phone. And to this day, I still don't know who she was on the phone with. That's a little eerie. So then back up, I went and like crept through the hallway. She was on our family computer. She was typing something and she got increasingly angry when she found out that I was peeking. I saw 2 glasses on the counter and I could tell that there was liquid in it, but I couldn't tell. It just kind of looked like water. And she was like, "McKenna, get back into your room right now." She didn't want to be in there. So I was already like very anxious. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go to bed. I'm like, I don't have a toothache anymore. I don't need medicine. I'm just going to go to bed. So I go back in to our room and I fall asleep. I then wake up to her like gently shaking me. Like, McKenna, get up. You need to take your medicine. What happened next, as a mother, I cannot fathom. Our children rely on us and trust us through the deepest levels of their soul. When I told my mom that I didn't want the medicine or didn't need the medicine, she pushed. When I tasted a little bit, it was like the film on a pill when it dissolves on your tongue just a little bit. That taste will forever be etched in my mind. It was the most disgusting taste. To this day, I don't like taking medicine because film powder taste that you have on your tongue, I had that times 1,000. It was So intense, so disgusting. I remember taking a sip and being like, Mom, I don't like that. I didn't even like taking Motrin or Tylenol or like a kid's like vitamin, let alone this mixture. I looked out in the glass, I could see little floating things in the glass and it was clear. I just remember, I don't want to drink this. I don't want to drink this. And my mom kept pushing and pushing. McKenna, you need to take it. You need to take it. You need to drink the whole thing. There cannot be anything left. I didn't realize that she had put 50 to 100 benzodiazepines in that drink for my 10-year-old self to consume. She knew that I was taking that amount of medicine when she forced me, and I declined. And she forced again, and I declined. And she said, you have to drink every single drop of that. I had no idea. I had the blind, loving trust of a daughter and a child that my mom was going to do what was best for me and had my best interest at heart and my care in her heart. But no, she had every intention of me dying that night. So she added that Capri Sun into the drink to make it taste better for me, and knowing with every sip that I was consuming something that would be lethal for me, poisoning her own daughter. And I did. I drank it. I drank it because I trusted my mom. I drank it because she was my home. And I drank it because she was the one person in my life who was there for me whenever I needed her and who was supposed to take care of me. And I trusted that. I had that blind faith in my mother because she was my home. After that drink, I don't remember anything else except for my next memory, waking up in this huge, giant white room with my dad next to me, which I knew I had just left my dad in Idaho, so I didn't understand how I was waking up with my dad next to me. And then I looked down at my hands and I had all of these IVs. I was hooked up to so many machines. I was looking around, I was in a hospital bed. But the last memory I had was laying my head on a pillow in my mom and I's bed. Comment if you guys want to hear a more in-depth part 2 from what happened after I woke up in a coma, in the hospital room, in foster care, testifying against my mom when I was 12 years old, her being sentenced to prison, me going and living with my dad, who was also active in his addiction after the sentencing, and then later my emancipation. If you want to hear all the goods, comment and I will share, especially within the new perspective of being a mom myself.
When I was 11 years old, my best friend went missing when she was walking to my home. Growing up, I lived in Alaska, and I had a very best friend, and her name was Mandy. And we went to the same school. We were in the same grade. We were thick as thieves. Now, her and we kind of lived out in the middle of nowhere, but our houses were as close as you could be when you live in a really rural setting in Alaska. And so we would call each other on our home phones, and we would make a plan where we would meet halfway down the road that we lived in. So one beautiful day, same thing. She called me. I answered the phone. We decided to walk towards each other and meet in the middle. So when I got to our designated meeting spot, she was nowhere to be found. Thought maybe, she had twisted her ankle. She was late. So I walked all the way to her house just to see what happened, kind of annoyed by the whole situation. And she is not there. And that is immediately what put the alert that something was terribly wrong. So a huge search was begun for Mandy into the woods. When nobody could find her, they contacted police. Police came out, couldn't find her anywhere, and they didn't know what happened. Like maybe she had ran into the woods, maybe she had gotten lost, maybe she had gotten abducted. So nothing for almost 10 days. They even used a canine and it caught her scent, but it ended at the edge of the woods. And so it would take 10 days before her little body was discovered. And when her little body was discovered, she had been SHOT twice, one in the head, and she had also been SA'd. And they think that she was SA'd by an inanimate object in the most deplorable and despicable ways. And so as they began to piece this together, it became kind of evident that this man named Charlie was responsible. They found some evidence of the welding materials. He was a welder. They found some evidence of that on him, on her body. They also found some blonde hairs in the truck. And so he was convicted of the crime and sentenced to life in prison. Now, even though there was lots of evidence that put him at the place, there were some problems in the first trial. And so they were beginning to consider if they should go back in and retry the whole case based on an appeal. But Charlie would get lung cancer and he would die in prison. So although this is a true story, this is not my story. But when I said my best friend, it became real to you. So often we depersonalize these events and we don't see them as real people. But Mandy was a real little girl with a family who loves her and still misses her to this day.
Imagine the terror of being in a huge burning building, surviving the crowd crush only to get to the emergency exit and discover it's chained shut and the flames are racing towards you. If you guys like deep dives, I post a brand new case on my podcast, The Bourne Investigation, every single week. It was the early 70s in the Isle of Man. Everyone was super excited about a new tourist attraction that was opening called Summerland. I feel like it sounds cute. It was basically a climate-controlled building on the seafront, which meant that even if the weather was terrible, you'd still be able to go there to the seaside and have a great time. It was like a hot seaside leisure centre that could house 10,000 people. It was massive. It had artificial sun, a dance hall, amazing pools. It was like a seaside paradise. What could possibly go wrong? The 2nd of August 1973 started like any other day. But unbeknownst to anyone else, 3 boys were secretly smoking by a kiosk outside. And how it exactly unfolded, I guess we may never know, but a piece of paper at the kiosk set on fire. The flames just erupted. The entire kiosk was almost instantly ablaze and the boys legged it. They were terrified. But the people inside Summerland were totally oblivious. It was full of people having the best time. They were at the restaurants, they were chilling, eating, swimming, and some of them noticed a little bit of smoke outside. They were kind of like, well, I guess it's outside, not in here. And the staff had honestly the same kind of attitude. They were like, don't worry, someone will put it out. It's only small. They had no idea how wrong they were. The burning kiosk was against the side of the building, which was covered in cladding. Now, this is really reminding me of the podcast episode I did on the Grenfell disaster, and we all know how that ended. Basically, this cladding was highly flammable, and the interior soundproofing of the walls were too. The whole building very quickly started to set on fire. Now, there were cavities in the building that acted like chimneys, which only made matters worse. The fire started spreading wildly. 3,000 people inside the building were told that there was nothing to worry about. The flames had burned right through the fire alarm system wires, so no sirens were even sounding. As the smoke got thicker, it dawned on people inside, actually, we need to get the hell out of here. And a mass panic began as people who'd been like chilling and leaving their kids in the play areas suddenly started trying to have to find their kids. Suddenly, people were being crushed in these crowds. And when people finally found the emergency exits, they realized they were chained shut. And this had been done to stop people getting in without paying. Why is it always about money? Some witnesses recalled seeing a woman running with her clothing on fire and then collapsing and being trampled by other people trying to escape. Among just a catalogue of serious errors, the fire service wasn't even called until 20 minutes after the fire had started. Eventually, the Coast Guard rang the fire brigade and was like, guys, it looks like the whole coast is on fire. But by that point, it was too late. 50 people were already dead, 9 of them children. A minimum of 80 were injured, and countless survivors were obviously traumatized by the absolute carnage that they'd seen. Turned out there had been a small fire the year prior, which was quickly put out, but a few people had raised concerns and were like, we don't really know about like the material of this building and how quickly it could set on fire in an emergency. Tragically, these conversations just got swept under the rug because it was kind of a bit of a pain to do anything about it now. A public inquiry was launched, but it was eventually just deemed that the deaths were down to misadventure.
The autopsy for 14-year-old Celeste Rivas has finally been released, and it alleges that the popular singer David took her life and waited weeks before dismembering her and putting her in his Tesla. According to the medical examiner, she passed away from multiple penetrating wounds done by a sharp object. Both of them were in her torso. One struck her liver and the other one was between her ribs. On top of that, she had abrasions on her hands and she lost 2 fingers. And I just have to wonder if that means there was a struggle between them, which has not been confirmed or said by police. They also said initially that there was meth and MDMA in her system. However, another screening of it showed that that wasn't the case and there possibly was adult drinks in her system. It is alleged on April 23rd, 2025, David, his real name is David Burke, lied in wait at his home for Celeste to take her life. Allegedly, there was an investigation being done into his inappropriate contact with a child under the age of 14. Mind you, he started talking to her on Discord when she was only 11 or 12 years old. Prosecutors say in order to protect his career that he took her out. Because of those circumstances, he could face the DP. It is being alleged after he took her life that he did not put her in the Tesla or dismember her at that point. He kept her somewhere. When everything was first coming out about the state of her body, a lot of people were questioning if maybe she was put into a freezer beforehand. Now that's not something that's being said by police, but it's definitely a question I have. And so allegedly after all this time passes, that is when he dismembers her and puts her into 2 different body bags in the front of his Tesla. Then we know he went on tour in the beginning of August, and by the end of August, early September is when they found Celeste. David allegedly had abandoned that Tesla, and so it was picked up by this tow company, and at the tow yard, a employee noticed a horrific smell, called the police, and that's how they discovered her. She turned 15 years old while still in that Tesla. That's where she had her birthday. So she never even got to turn 15 years old. So David is now being charged with special circumstances. He is facing life in prison or not being alive any longer. So much is now coming out since he's officially been arrested. I will keep you guys updated. And all I can hope is that Celeste gets justice. She was so young. I just wish someone could have protected her from this entire situation, because even if it wasn't David somehow, somebody did this to her. And that person doesn't deserve to be in the free world ever again.
They are the most disgusting photos I have ever seen. He didn't want the world to see them. He didn't want the world to see them so bad. He done the unthinkable. His name is Mark Redwine, and this is the devastating murder of Dylan Redwine. It was late November 2012, and 13-year-old Dylan Redwine was going to go and spend Thanksgiving with his father, Mark Redwine. Mark lived in a real rural area outside Durango, Colorado. It's said to have been surrounded by rugged terrain. It was apparently extremely beautiful, like beautiful scenes, but extremely isolating too. You were totally out on your own out of that house. And the thing was, Dylan didn't want to go on this trip. He didn't want to go and spend time with his dad. It wasn't even just him that didn't want him going. His mummy didn't want him going either. His parents had went through a divorce. They were divorced and they were now going through a real bitter custody battle. And the court order said that Dylan had to go, so they had no choice in just letting him go. He had to go. Dylan was seen on CCTV walking through the airport with his dad, and you wouldn't have thought they were related. They weren't speaking to each other. There was just a real distance between them. You see, it wasn't even just the divorce that caused them to distance from each other and drift apart. Dylan and his brother had discovered some absolutely disgusting photos on his dad's computer. In these photos, he was dressed in women's clothing and he was eating human feces out of a nappy. Dylan had actually asked his brother a few days before he had went on this trip to send it to him because he was going to confront his dad. On the way back from the airport, Dylan had apparently asked could he go and see a friend whenever he got back, but his dad says, no, you're here to spend time with me and that's what you're doing. So Dylan arranged to meet his friend the next morning at 6:30 a.m. Imagine a 13-year boy, that's how much he wanted to be away from his dad. The next morning rolls round, 6:30 had passed. Dylan's friend hasn't heard from him and he starts getting really worried. There's just no sign of him at all and he can't get in touch with him with his phone. Mark had apparently left Dylan in the house as he went out to get some errands and Dylan didn't want to go. And whenever he came back, Dylan was nowhere to be seen. But where Mark lived, it's not a place you would just take a walk. Mark did report Dylan missing later on that day and a massive search started. So the police came, there was volunteers, there was search dog, there was air support and above seeing if they could see him. But there was no sign. One person who didn't take part in the search was Mark. His house remained in darkness. You would think if your son was missing, you'd be sitting, even if you weren't joining in the search, you definitely wouldn't have the house in darkness. You would have it lit up like a Christmas tree until he came home. But no, it was in darkness. He had went to bed. Within days of Dylan's disappearance, Mark's ex-wife came forward and what she said was really scary. She had said that during an argument with Mark before, he had said that if he ever wanted to get rid of a body, he would bring it up to the mountains and let the animals basically do the work. He also said that he would rather kill his children than let her have them. He was interviewed on TV and he kept referring to Dylan in past tense. He refused to do a lie detector test. He then actually appeared on the Dr. Phil show with his ex-wife and he still wasn't doing a lie detector test. He said about doing it at a later stage as if he maybe wanted to go and practice on how to pass it. Did he want to learn how to pass it? 7 whole months went by before Dylan's body was tragically found. It was found 8 miles from Mark's home. Even more heartbreakingly, his whole body wasn't even there. Dylan had been decapitated and his body was in such a mess from the elements, from wild animals. There wasn't much left and there was no way of determining how he was actually killed, how he died. Witnesses then came forward saying that they had seen Mark in April 2013 driving alone on that trail. His home was searched with cadaver dogs and Dylan's blood was found in the living room. Dogs also picked up the smell of death there. He was arrested for second-degree murder and child abuse. Prosecution claimed that Dylan had confronted his dad and he had went into a rage and killed him, so nobody else would hear about his disgusting photos. He was found guilty and sentenced to 48 years for the murder of his beautiful son. Now the whole world gets to see his disgusting photos that he really didn't want anybody to see. So sad. Next stories like these, don't forget to follow, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Police didn't take her case seriously because they thought she just ran away because she didn't want to clean her room. But now, 37 years later, we still don't know what happened to her. Where is Kimberly Norwood? Kimberly Rochelle Norwood was 12 years old and living in Hallsville, Texas at the time of her disappearance. She was an honor student in the 6th grade with straight A's. She was a kid that just loved school. She really loved science and social studies. And then outside of school, she really enjoyed horseback riding. She had a sister as well as several brothers, and then she was 2 weeks away from graduating middle school. On Friday, May 19th, 1989, had a sleepover at a friend's house. Everything was completely normal. The following day, on May 20th, she went home to go drop off her stuff, and then her mother, Janice, and her sister, Pam, and her decided to go horseback riding again. Everything was completely normal. She would run into 3 of her friends there, and they would decide to go off and play. 4:50 p.m., Kimberly will phone Janice to see if one of her friends could spend the night. Janice says no, and this makes Kimberly very unhappy. So they get into a little bit of an argument on the phone, and that's when Janice is like, okay, whatever, you need to come home then, and you need to clean your room anyway. So Kimberly and the 3 girls will all walk together to leave. And I need you to understand, so Kimberly lives in Hallsville. It's considered Hallsville, but she lives in a subdivision out in the country in a very wooded area. And the roads are super windy. Like if somebody that didn't live there was driving down those roads, they are 100% getting lost. I just wanted you to kind of understand where we're at here. As well as in the Hallsville area and this country area, there are several highways in the area, which I think is important to note. Kimberly's friends will see her cross the Caney Creek Bridge, which is on Franklin Road. And at this point, they're all going their separate ways to their own home. Kimberly is less than a mile away from her house, yet she is never seen again. Her family wasn't too worried at first. They just thought she was being slow because she was mad. And Kimberly's mom, Janice, and then her sister will end up going shopping and then picking up dinner on the way home. They return at about 7:30 p.m., but that's when Kimberly's dad, Bobby's like, hey, where's Kimberly at? And they say, what do you mean, where's Kimberly at? Isn't she here with you in her room? And that is when they realize that Kimberly is missing and they start searching for her. They call all of her friends and they can't find her anywhere. So that is when a missing persons report is filed. Police unfortunately decided early on that Kimberly must not have wanted to clean her room, so she ran away, which made sense to nobody around Kimberly. That is just not the type of kid she was. She would not do that. So her family got as many people together as they could to start combing through the woods that they lived in, and they searched it multiple times and determined she was definitely not in the area. Now, like I said, the Harrison County Sheriff's Office was not taking it seriously, so the family had to hire a private investigator as well as offer a reward themselves It took the sheriff's office a while to take this case seriously. A whole month after her disappearance, the sheriff's office finally had the parents take polygraph tests, which they passed. They had several others that were close to Kimberly take polygraph tests. And then in July of 1990, the sheriff's office will show up at the Norwood family home and start searching it like crazy. And again, this is July of 1990. She went missing May of 1989. So whole year goes by. They're searching the home, and then they dig up their driveway as well, as if they were searching for her remains or something. Many felt like this was actually just retaliation because the family was very open about the sheriff's department not doing anything. So a lot of people just thought that maybe the sheriff's office was retaliating against them because they were so open. Kimberly's family searched for her for years. Unfortunately, her father did pass away in 2019 and her mother passed away in 2020. Kimberly would be 49 years old today. Her family, her friends, and her community deserve answers on what happened to her. Her family always believed that she was abducted and is still alive somewhere out there. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Kimberly Norwood, you can contact the Harrison County Sheriff's Office at 903 935 4888, or you can contact Crime Stoppers at 1-877 373 8477. Thank you for listening to Kimberly's story. Be sure to follow for more true crime. And if you have any case recommendations, feel free to comment them or directly message me.
He may have gotten away with murdering his first wife, but the investigators wanted to make sure he would not get away with it for the second time. This is Barbara Purcell. She lives in Winnebago County, Illinois, and she's an occupational therapist. She's described as being very friendly, very kind, but she's a very private person. Before she was an occupational therapist, she was a waitress, and that's where she met her husband, Willard. They had a lot of things in common, but he was also a very private person. On June 6, 2001, Barbara did not show up for work, and she would always call in to say if she would not make it, and her coworkers were really concerned about her. So they went to her home to do a welfare check, and they have a storm door, and the door that leads into the house, it had not been closed all the way. And when they went into the home in the basement, they had found a deceased female. They had found Barbara at the bottom of the stairs. She was laying face down with her feet kind of somewhat up on the stairs. There was blood all around her head from blunt force trauma, and there was blood spatter on the walls and also on the stairs. They believe the wounds on her head were caused by a flashlight, and they found one in the home with her DNA on it. They also found a broken window, and they also found there was a coffee table with drawers, and a lot of them had been pulled out and dumped over, like someone had taken something. It's possible that Barbara was SA'd because her undergarments were missing, but there was signs of a struggle, and she fought for her life. So about 75 yards from the property near a wooded area, they found tire tracks, and in this area, no one would be able to see this vehicle from the neighbors or even the main road. They believe Barbara was attacked when she got home from work. She was in the kitchen near the stairwell when she was struck in the back of the head and was hit a minimum of 3 times in the head while she had fallen down the stairs. The housekeeper had said that some of Barbara's jewelry was missing, her wedding ring was missing, and also some coins. But the investigators feel like something is off, like someone had staged the scene. Because in a typical robbery, they just come in and rob the place and leave. They don't confront the homeowner and then assault them. The investigators wanted to take the computer, but there was a wire that was up in the drop ceiling. So when they went up there, they had found in the drop ceiling, they found dirty magazines, also dirty videos, and Barbara's life insurance policy, which they thought was very odd to put all these items together. But it turns out her husband is the sole beneficiary. So Willard was brought in for questioning, and he was very standoffish, and he claims he has an alibi. He was in Naperville most of the day doing a job, and then he went to his brother's house where he was staying. Now, he wasn't asking why the police were questioning him. He just said, "What did my wife say about me now?" And they said, "Well, your wife has been found murdered." And he seemed a little concerned that he was going to be in trouble. So he stopped answering questions and hired a lawyer.
So they talked to Barbara's co-workers and her very close friends, and they said that there was marital problems. There was no emotion in the relationship. There was no hand-holding, there was no kissing or hugging. And she was taking classes for hand therapy, and it caused her to travel. And she was more on the road than she was at home. There was also a lot of fighting going on. He was upset that she bought her own cell phone and they were sleeping in separate bedrooms. And whenever either one of them received a phone call, they would take it outside, answer the phone, and then come back inside when they were done. And they both were accusing each other of having affairs on each other. They found out that just a week before Barbara was murdered, Willard was arrested. Barbara was just in the garage when all of a sudden Willard came out of nowhere and tased her. There was no confrontation. There was no argument. He just all of a sudden popped out and just tased her. She drove herself to the hospital and got treatment. And he was arrested, but he got bonded out after a few days and she got an order of protection. Now, after this, she was terrified for her life and believes he had something to do with his first wife's death. So in 1987, Willard's first wife, Crystal, was found in the exact same way, just like Barbara was. She was found at the bottom of the stairs, but they could not prove it was actual homicide. They declared it as an accident. But a lot of people have a feeling he actually murdered her. The autopsy showed that Barbara had 3 blows to the back of her head, and they also found bite marks on her hand. So they took an impression of Willard's mouth and compared it to the bite marks, and it was a match. His phone records show he was not where he said he was. He was in the vicinity of Barbara's home, and also the tires from his truck matched the tires at the crime scene. In Willard's vehicle, they also found a bag with the missing items from the home, which included her wedding ring, the coins, and some jewelry. But according to him, Barbara had gave it to him after she had that order of protection and just gave him some of his belongings, and that was just what she gave him. So the investigators decided to look into his first wife's death, and they exhumed her body, but they could not conclude there was foul play. There was only 1 blow to the back of her head, so that case was closed. So Willard was arrested and charged with first-degree homicide, and he took the stand in his own defense, and he's trying to claim self-defense. So he claims Barbara came home, realized that he was at the house when he wasn't supposed to be. They got into an argument, and she came at him with the flashlight. But eventually there was a struggle. He got the flashlight, and then he knocked her in the head. And he thought she was just going to wake up and, eventually call for help. But that's not the case, and the jury is not buying his story. Willard was found guilty of first-degree homicide, and he was sentenced to life in prison, but he only served 15 years because he passed away in 2015 from cancer. It's just absolutely heartbreaking what happened to Barbara, and I believe he thought he could get away with it for the second time. But thankfully, he did not. He got away with Crystal's death, but we're not quite sure if it really was an accident or if it was homicide. But I have a feeling he had something to do with it. He seemed like he was a very violent person and was full of rage. And my heart goes out to Barbara and Crystal, and I pray that they are at peace. But let me know what you guys thought of this story in the comments. Thanks for watching. I love you all. We'll see you in the next one. And please take care of yourselves.